Hello, kia ora, g'day, I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Friday update for Tropical Cyclone Alfred. Let's have a look and see what the situation is like here on Friday morning. The tropical cyclone offshore, Category 2 still. It is expected to drop back to Category 1 over the next 24 hours. To be honest, there's not a huge difference between a low-end Category 2 and a high-end Category 1. Maybe only 10 to 20 kilometres an hour difference in those big gusts of wind. 981 hectopascals is the central air pressure. It's moving along, the whole system is moving along at just 1 knot, 3 kilometres an hour, slower than a human being walking. That's why not much is changing at the moment. Why is that? High pressure down to the south, ballooning out to the east, holding it in place, can't move at the moment very much. The winds are gusting 130 k's an hour, sustained at 95. Now that's the cyclone just generally speaking, but once it interacts with land and the ranges around parts of Queensland and New South Wales, that completely breaks up those winds. And so some areas are very calm, other areas may see winds gusting above 130 k's an hour as they come down the other side of the hills and ranges. The latest tracking from the Bureau of Meteorology, please do stay up to date with them. The tracking might change and the numbers might change a wee bit today. Category 2 when we recorded this, and like I said yesterday, it's either a low-end Category 2 or a Category 1 at the higher end as it starts to come on in. This area here in the pink shading, that's the destructive winds, gale force winds in that larger pale zone. This is the area to watch out for. Now, at the same time as this is starting to move into Queensland and New South Wales, this pink zone here with the destructive winds will start to shrink. So it's kind of one step forward, one step back as it moves on in. This is the reason why the whole eastern side here is lit up with the orange warnings from the Bureau of Meteorology telling you rain and wind coming into those areas. So let's start with the wave heights. There is some good news today about this. They are starting to drop down. So as we go through the next 24 hours and the cyclone comes in and makes landfall, the waves will start to ease back. Now, easing back doesn't mean it's calm, but easing back from the extreme conditions that we're seeing at the moment, the 6, 7, 8, 9 metre waves, and like we've said, there's been waves above that over 15 metres. So let's animate this as we go through Friday. You'll see it all kind of moving into the coastline, and it really starts to fall apart as we go through Saturday and into Sunday. So the worst of it is today, and then it eases back, or the worst might have already been, to be honest with you, but we're going to be seeing it really properly come into the coastal areas across Friday. But by the time we get to Sunday morning, pretty much easing back because there's still 3 to 4 metre waves coming through all the way from Brisbane here down towards Sydney. So some pretty big swells and waves on the way. Let's get into the wind maps now. So let's take a look at 10 o'clock this morning. Some of the mapping suggests that maybe the worst of the winds have kind of already been through, but I wouldn't guarantee that because of the mountains and ranges, the Great Dividing Range and other ranges coming off from it are going to break up and disturb the airflow. You are seeing that here. Notice how around the Great Dividing Range you get these blobs of kind of purple. That's where the wind gusts are going up over 100 k's an hour, 120, 130, maybe 140, 150, because it depends on how it comes on through. And certainly along here, the black line indicating the tops of the ridge, that's the area to keep an eye out where it comes over and into the Queensland area. And then on top of that, you've got the wind coming straight off the sea into places like Byron Bay, all the way up to about Jacobs Well, certainly the Gold Coast, smack bang in the middle of the worst winds. And then you've got another separate burst of winds further to the south that is breaking apart from the main cyclone, and that is due to the high pressures belt further to the south. So not a great deal of change as we move through today. The winds perhaps sort of shrink a wee bit in the sense of how much of an area it covers. So by 7 o'clock tonight, calm in the middle of the cyclone as you would expect. The damaging winds are around here, and the worst of the winds are coming into the southern part of the cyclone. So that is certainly around the Gold Coast, most exposed to that, getting down to about Tweed Heads. Beyond that, still very blustery, still possibly damaging, but the worst of the winds are in this area here, and again, along the tops of the ridges, pushing further inland to places like Toowoomba. All right, going through to Saturday morning, and we've still got the cyclone centered here or further to the north. This is showing 2 maps. So this is one up here is the European modeling, that's the American modeling. Remarkably close Not perfectly aligned, but very similar. So that basically means we're pretty confident about this map with the windy weather coming back in, still around the Gold Coast and just into that northeastern corner of New South Wales. 1 o'clock on Saturday, two different models here. The animated white lines are the American one, the still one is the European modelling, and you can see they're pretty much over the top of each other. So that gives us confidence as forecasters that this is going to happen. Northeasterly winds are certainly pushing through here. So as the day goes on, they go from being south to southeast and they start to swing up to the northeast, and that will change what happens in the coastal areas. Some beaches may become more exposed to damaging coastal erosion and also rivers being blocked by the storm surge, causing some backup into the estuaries. So you see that at 1 o'clock on Saturday. By the evening though, it's falling apart a lot more. Still feeding in towards Brisbane though. Brisbane may start to see stronger winds now coming from the opposite direction, or at least coming out of the north to northeast rather than the south to southeast. And that pushes further inland. Toowoomba could be seeing these big strong gusts that could be damaging into that area. Also further down past Stanthorpe all the way down to Armidale could be seeing these very strong winds as they come over the Great Dividing Range. And by the time we get to Sunday morning, it's really fallen apart, but blustery in a number of areas. Someone commented yesterday we didn't show a Sunday map. That's because there's not really a lot of dramatic stuff to talk about, but you are seeing west of the black line, so that's west of the peak of the main divide there, you're seeing that windy weather pushing up further westward, so gusty winds, could be some trees down, some power cuts as well. And by the time we get to Monday afternoon, it's more of a typical windy nor'easter coming from high pressure out over the Tasman Sea and a wee bit of low pressure over New South Wales. That puts the squeeze on with those northeasterly winds. Probably not damaging, but certainly blustery. Could be a few branches down here and there, maybe the odd power cut. So let's have a look at that quickly now in an animation form so you can get a better understanding as to what's going on. So as it moves on in, the worst of those winds in the pink and purple shading, that's the part that falls apart. Red is gale force, purple and pink shows those hurricane force winds, the really damaging severe gales, and certainly things ease by the time we get to Tuesday. Let's get into the rain part of it now. We'll make more sense of the wet weather. So most of the rain, as we mentioned the other day, is in the southern quadrant of this low pressure zone. So if you cut a line in it sideways like that, through the middle of it, the rain's in the bottom half of it, not the top half. So all that wet weather pushing in from south of the Gold Coast or around about the Gold Coast southwards into New South Wales. There's also another burst of very heavy rain coming in further south, west of Coffs Harbour, coming inland as well. We've seen some big rainfall totals down there over the last 24 hours. Jumping through to 4 o'clock this afternoon, the cyclone 978. This is the Bureau of Meteorology's computer modelling, which we haven't been using up until now. And now we're showing it to you. So that shows all the heavy rain in the blue here, mostly offshore, but starting to build up as you go in there to New South Wales. By the way, it's already been raining, obviously, so this is building up on top of what has already fallen. Brisbane northwards, pale blue, nothing to really worry about as far as rainfall is concerned because that's down in the bottom part of the scale. As we go into tonight, you can see the heavier rain really pushing in now into New South Wales. This shows 24 hours of rainfall up to 10 o'clock. So that also includes rain that's already fallen overnight and this morning. But the areas here in the blue, that is 300, 400 millimetres or so, starting to really build up along New South Wales, in particular around the northern rivers there. Now going into the weekend properly, going into 4 o'clock in the morning, you see that rain pushing further up. The rainfall totals lifting up around New South Wales, but also into the very, very, very southeastern corner of Queensland. I know you often say the southeast of Queensland, but this is literally right in the very corner of it. That's where you're seeing the heaviest of the rain. Not so bad further west of Brisbane, which is good news for the catchment areas. But I gotta say, these rain clouds are broken up and it's tricky once it interacts with land. We deal with this in New Zealand all the time. Our mountains and ranges completely break weather forecasts all the time. And so if you live in a flat area and a cyclone comes in, it's pretty easy to forecast. But in the hillier areas, that does break things up. So as we go through, let's go into Saturday morning, later into the morning. The blue is now going further up into Queensland. That's because the cyclone is expected to track a bit more northwest, going northwards again. That lifts the rain further up the coastline rather than down the coastline. We are still seeing some big totals around Coffs Harbour, by the way, inland around the hills there. That sort of will build up over the next day or so. Later into Saturday, the cyclone's inland, probably an ex-cyclone by that point. Heavier rain moving further up now into Brisbane. Rainfall totals now, remember this is 24 hours up to the timestamp you see. So 4 o'clock Friday afternoon to 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Now you're starting to talk about rainfall numbers well over 300 millimetres in the southeastern corner of Queensland and the very northeastern corner of New South Wales. Saturday night, now the rain is pushing into Brisbane a lot more, because the heavy, wet, northeasterly weather is coming through. That is driving in tropical rain across Queensland into that corner around the major metropolitan areas and now further inland around the catchment areas, the dams, all that kind of stuff. So going into Sunday, 24 hours of rain up until Sunday morning. This is the zone. It is mostly in Queensland by this point. That'll be a bit of relief, hopefully, to the Northern Rivers region. We really hope that this map stays true. It could still move if the cyclone comes in a little further south or a little further north. That changes the rainfall. But you get the idea. As we go through the weekend, some of that rain moves further up as the cyclone comes in. So let me animate all of what I've just talked about to try and make sense of it all, because it is a little bit complicated to fully get your head around. I appreciate that. It's a slow moving system, mountains and ranges interacting with it, and of course the Great Dividing Range. But here is the rainfall maps showing you what is coming through over the next few days through to Sunday, and it shows the biggest of the rainfall is from Maroochydore down to Port Macquarie, but it's especially Brisbane, Gold Coast, Northern Rivers. That to me is the area most exposed to the very heavy rain, along with this small portion here between Port Macquarie, Southwest Rocks, going inland, higher elevation areas where the rivers are, that kind of thing. Let's have a look at the final map here that we've got for you. This shows basically 24 hours of rainfall up until the point that we recorded this for you. So you can see some really big totals in here, up around parts of Queensland and going into New South Wales. You're seeing some bigger totals there, getting closer to 200 millimetres, but already over 200 millimetres inland from Coffs Harbour. So that's what I mean by sort of two separate areas, the cyclone itself and a secondary area further southwards down the New South Wales coastline, bringing wind and rain as well. I hope this has made sense to you. Certainly a lot to cover at the moment as we track the cyclone around Australia. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again on Saturday morning. There's also a possibility we might be back again Friday night. Although, as you've just seen, this is a very slow moving system. There may not be too much more extra to add with another update today, but we will be monitoring it, and if we do come back, don't be surprised. Thanks for all the comments on YouTube. We can't possibly reply to all of you, but wow, blown away. Thank you. Blown away. Probably shouldn't say that one. Have yourselves a great rest of your day. We'll catch you later on.